begun. The search wars have. Welcome to Primary Technology, the show about the tech news that matters. Huge show this week. We have new iPads. I have my M4 iPad Pro here. We're going to give some early impressions, maybe a little bit reviews. Google I.O. is this week. We're going to talk about how maybe exciting or unexciting that was. Also, ChatGPT announced its 4o model and some pretty incredible examples. So we're going to talk about that. Apple announced more accessibility features coming with iOS 18 like eye tracking and a ton more. This episode is brought to you by you, those who support the show directly, and we thank you for that. My name is Stephen Robles, one of your hosts, and joining me, as always, is my friend Jason Aten. How's it going, Jason?
It's good. It's very good.
It's good. I'm so excited. I got my iPad Pro yesterday. This is it, the M4 11-inch iPad Pro. I think I might be the only person who's going to have a YouTube video about the 11-inch iPad Pro.
That might be true.
I have not seen many. I don't even know if Apple has even sent like review units for 11-inch out to people. This is not a review unit. I bought this one. This is going to be my main iPad, which I'm very excited about. So good talk about that. Did you get? I know you got an iPad Air for review.
Yep.
Do you have one of the new Pros as well, or no?
I do not have a Pro. I have not bought anything still. I'm really good at. I'm getting good at this not buying things.
Not buying things. Well, I'm curious. I'm going to ask you about the Nano-Texture again, if you could recount your memories from the event, because
Sure.
I don't, and I'm not going to say I regret the Nano-Texture. I need to go to the store and actually look at it. But, well, anyway, we'll talk about the iPads in a second. Stop trying to get me on that, Jason. Goodness. Trying to get me off topic. I'm just kidding.
I literally don't think I've said a word about it except for in response to a question. Just to be clear.
That's exactly right. I'm excited about it. But I want to thank 5-star reviews for the show and Apple Podcasts. Cobb RSK and Kevin JT, battery percentage on. It's okay, nobody's perfect. And CR Peck. This was interesting. He actually listed for all of his devices. He does battery percentage off for iPad and iPhone. Thank you. But he has it on for his MacBook, which I thought was interesting. So battery percentage on for MacBook, off for his like mobile devices. And CR Peck is also asking for more HomeKit content, and we will do that for sure once there's actually HomeKit content to talk about.
Doesn't burying an Ethernet cable in the backyard count as HomeKit content? Sort of.
That's smart home. I would say that's smart home. I'll count that as smart home. But no, we are going to talk about HomeKit because I have some cool things we talk about. Hopefully at WWDC, which is now quickly approaching. We are 3-4 weeks away. Less than a month from WW. The keynote is on Monday, June 10th. So we're less than a month away, and maybe HomeKit will actually have a section in the keynote. It hasn't had one in, I think, a few years, so we'll see.
I think like the HomePod Mini introduction was the last time when they had the house set up or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes Apple TV will get like combined with HomeKit stuff because
that's true.
When they announce it has Thread, but only if you get the Ethernet model, and it's weird. But anyway. We'll see. We'll see if they talk about that.
Well, now, before you go on, I have to just ask a question about this battery percentage on the Mac.
Yes.
Which is madness. But
Wait a minute. So you're going to say battery percentage on is good on the phone, but madness on the MacBook.
Well, first of all, my MacBook is plugged in most of the day, so what do I even care?
Well,
but second of all, if you have a MacBook Air, again, what do you even care? It'll last you 3 days. But here's the only reason that this is madness, because I just went ahead and toggled this.
Yeah.
And what is Apple even doing? Because they put the percentage next to the battery icon. What even is this, Stephen?
Which is how it was on the iPhone a long time ago. It was next to the icon.
I don't even understand. That's,
because
to me,
the number in the battery icon on the iPhone, I'm just going to say it. It's ugly. It doesn't look good. I don't like it.
It's also like 3 points tall. No one even.
I don't like it. I don't like it.
We can debate this more later, but I just think like Apple. So it's not so much madness that CR Peck has it on. It's that Apple, you could do a better job. Like there's still plenty of room in that menu bar.
I think I'm gonna put it on. Let me enable the battery percentage for my Mac Studio real quick and see what that looks like. Just kidding.
If you could figure that one out, I'm real impressed, bud.
That's why I like desktop computers. And John Syracuse talks about this all the time. But one of the things I love not thinking about when it comes to my computer is battery, and that's why Mac Studio is just great. I just never have to think about it. You know what we should do? Everyone should go to our community and tell us what they think about their battery percentage on their MacBook. And I just want to tell more people are joining the community every week. So fun. Thank you for doing that. You can go to social.primarytech.fm. It's free to join. You could talk about the episodes. I have a post each for that. Lots of conversations going on. That's where I announced a live unboxing of the iPad Pro. And graduation season, that's a question from one of you guys, listeners, and just a bunch of posts, both from you and Jason and I. Jason's posting his articles in here, so you can read all of that, like his M2 iPad Air review. And my videos get auto-posted there. I used a Zapier automation. I was being fancy with that, yeah. So links to that in the show notes as well. Come join the community, and we're having lots of fun over there. Ask questions about the iPad Pro, because I'm going to be doing a video very soon. And I don't know if I should call it a review. I feel like, how do you feel about reviews? So we're talking about the M4 iPad Pro. I've had it for like 16 hours, 18 hours maybe. It arrived like 3 p.m. yesterday. And I think certain devices, when you say you're going to review it, especially if it's like the Apple Vision Pro, like a new product, I do think you have to spend a significant amount of time with it to understand like how to talk about it, what are actually the pain points or the advantages. When it comes to an iPad like this one, I've been using iPads for many years. I've been editing podcasts on iPad exclusively for about 6 or 7 years. I've used every size iPad. I had the 11-inch in 2018. I went to the 12.9-inch when it got mini LED. I spent the last 7-8 months with iPad mini. Like, I have lots of experience with all these iPads. And all the thoughts that I'm about to share about the new iPad Pro, like, they came to me pretty quickly. And so I feel like a week with it is not going to make that big of a difference as opposed to a couple days with it because of my experience with it. How do you feel about saying review depending on the product and the time that which you have it? What do you think about that?
I'm really glad you asked the question again, because the whole time you were talking, I was just adding up in my head the amount of money that Steven has spent on iPads.
I traded in a lot of those iPads.
Okay.
I did a lot of trade-ins and stuff like that. Yeah.
I just was like doing math, and so I totally lost track of what you were even saying.
Yeah.
But
thank you.
I think it's interesting, like, what is a review? So I reviewed the 13-inch Air, MacBook Air. No, iPad Air. I can't talk. Words are really hard for us writers. I'm sorry.
M2 13-inch iPad Air, the new one.
Yeah, I got the Air. I'm going to just stick with that. It's the Air.
That's right.
The 13-inch Air. And so I had it for basically a week to write about it. And in this case, it was actually fairly easy because my take was just, if you like the iPad Pro 12.9-inch, that's what this is, except for it has fewer speakers, no ProMotion, and no mini LED. But other than that, like, that's what this thing is. I think that for someone like you, the important thing is, like, there's a whole bunch of videos. That's the first thing people go to look at. And then if you're going to have a take, it has to be it probably benefits from being a little bit more in depth, right? Because at this point, nobody is looking for the first impressions things, which is really what all of the videos that publish at the embargo and all the articles that publish at the embargo are. They're just quick impressions. The difference for me with the iPad Air actually was that I have an M2 iPad Pro. And I have, a year and a half, 2 years of experience using it. I know exactly what the M2 is capable of in an iPad. So it was really easy for me to be like, it's just bigger. There were some cool features. I did the Logic stuff. But for what is a review? Super philosophical question. We had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, I feel like.
Yeah.
But I think it's fine to call it a review. But I think it's like the space where there's, valuable content to be made is, I used this as my primary device for 3 weeks, and here's what I thought. Like, that kind of thing.
Well, I'm not going to call my video a review. I do want to try and get it up soon, because there is that diminishing returns of, if you post a video about the new product 3 weeks after it launches, people are not as interested. But I want to focus on the two things that I use iPad for mainly, which is editing podcasts, which is my biggest use case, and sheet music, which I still use occasionally, and my wife does. And so I just have to say, the iPad Pro, I was not at the event. I did not get that initial impression holding it and such. And I know everyone has said it. I know, but I'm going to say it again too. The thinness and lightness of this device is pretty stark. When you pick it up for the first time, when I took it out of the box, I was really impressed. And I went with the 11-inch because, again, my primary use case of editing podcasts, I hold it in tablet mode the whole time I'm doing it. And over the last few years, I had the 12.9-inch because I wanted that mini LED screen, but it's too unwieldy when I'm editing like 2 audio tracks. I'm editing the 2 of us, and it's a really big screen. The mini was great for thinness and lightness, but the screen quality was just not there. I missed ProMotion, and scrubbing through waveforms just was not as good on the Mini because you just couldn't see as quickly. You lose the clarity. And so the thinness and lightness of this device is pretty amazing. And the Magic Keyboard, I have to say, this thing is so much improved over the previous one. Not only thinness and lightness, but Jason, the function row of keys. I always knew I probably wanted it, but the first time I just reached over and adjusted the brightness of my iPad with a keyboard key was amazing. And same for volume. Like volume and brightness, just those two shortcuts on the Magic Keyboard. Just my first few hours with this is like, this is a way better experience overall. Magic Keyboard and iPad and everything together, and how thin it is when you close it. And, because previously the Magic Keyboard and iPad Pro was like thicker than a MacBook Pro, and it was really heavy. And this is just, it's so thin and light. So anyway, I really like it, and I'm going to be very bullish on it, I think.
Okay, but I have questions for you about it.
Yes, please.
Because we need to get some of your takes. I think it's worth mentioning, for context, the previous 11-inch compared to the new one is almost 10% thinner. It's all like that's you think it's a half a millimeter, but it was 5.9 millimeters going down to 5.4 millimeters. Like, that's almost that's almost 10% reduction in the larger one is even more.
Right.
It's kind of bananas when you think about it. But I'm curious, what was the thing that surprised you the most about either the keyboard or the screen or whatever it was, like getting that 11-inch in your hands? What surprised you the most? Like, what were you not expecting?
Well, one, I was surprised at how much I missed the 11-inch form factor because, again, for podcast editing specifically, I do think this is the perfect size. You get the screen real estate plus ProMotion, and the reason why it just was so good picking it up because I hold it like a tablet for like 2 hours at a time. That's the typical amount of time I spend usually editing the show or whatever. And so like being able to just barely feel it, and obviously you hold it for 2 hours, it is going to get heavier and more awkward like as you're editing. And so the fact that it is so light and thin at first means that a longer editing session is going to be just more comfortable and better to do. And so I think that's what's hit me the most. And I love the 11-inch size. I know there's so many people that are like, iPad mini is the best iPad. And I love the iPad mini. It's great for reading, for sure. People love the bigger size. I think one of the things I keep seeing in all the reviews is the whole, it's great hardware hamstrung by the software. You will not hear me say that in my review or here because the software is great for what I use it for. Like, I don't want different software. This software is great. I might say I would love to be able to choose an audio input and output, but that could be an iPad OS in the settings. That's probably the one thing I would hope for. But I think the larger size makes people think it should be a Mac because that's the size of the MacBook Air. And it gets closer to those laptops. But the 11-inch I just think is it's the perfect size for me. I'll just say that.
Yeah, and I think you make a really, really good point, which is that if it were not for the previous 12.9 and now 13-inch iPads, I don't know that there would be quite as much clamoring for this thing should run Mac OS or this thing should replace a Mac or whatever. I agree with you. I've always felt like the 11-inch was the perfect iPad size. Right. I feel like it's the perfect size for a device that you want to. There was someone who commented on one of our YouTube last week, I think it was, and was talking about how it should be able to dual boot and run Mac OS and whatever. And I'm not quoting the person, but the point was like, because objectively it would be better to have one device instead of two. And I don't think that's true because I want my laptop to have a 13 or 14-inch screen. I do not want my iPad to have a 13 or 14-inch screen. I want it to be 11 inches because for all of the things I do on an iPad, it's the perfect size. 11 inches in my mind, the great size. This 13-inch Air is great. Like, it is a fantastic laptop. Of course, all I'm doing is showing you the case, which is very not exciting. But it's a great size. It's a great form factor. It's not a new form factor. Like, we're real familiar with this. It is great though that now you can get basically the same iPad that you could buy 3 weeks ago and say $400, right? Like that's pretty amazing. You get the M2, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I think that if they'd never made a larger size, the iPad would be the iPad. It wouldn't be bumping up against that. But for you, I have a question. Like, you have a Mac Studio, you have a MacBook Pro.
Yeah.
Do you think that a 13-inch, had you gone that route, could have replaced the types of things you do on your laptop? Because you don't, unless you're traveling, you do all of your intensive computing things on your desktop computer, right? And I don't even really know. I don't honestly know why you have a Mac Pro, but and that's no judgment. I'm not. We have never really talked about this
because I wanted Jason.
Yeah,
Goodness.
because it was there and it has an M3 in it.
It existed,
and it was what was next. We went there because it was next.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, but like for the types of things that you do on that, would a larger iPad Pro have been a substitute, or do you feel like what I was just saying, where the iPad should be for iPad things and I use my Mac for Mac things?
I think this is going to be part of whatever video I make about this.
Yeah,
because
sorry. I'm just trying to spoil all your videos.
No, it's good because I can hash the idea here. Form factor is a big deal in the devices you use. Like, you can answer 50 emails on your iPhone. So why don't you? Why do you need a Mac? You can answer those emails on your iPhone. You can attach files. You can put an image. Like, you can do all of it on your iPhone. Why do you need a Mac for that? But as we could probably all attest to, if you have to write a bunch, it's way better to do that with a physical keyboard. And maybe it's a Magic Keyboard on the iPad, but maybe it's a Mac. And so when I look at like the devices, like, someone might say, is it overkill? Because that's the question everybody's asking. Is the iPad overkill because it's so powerful? Or is it overkill to have whatever? And I want to go to just mention John Gruber's review of the iPad, because he was one of the few people that did not argue that it should run Mac OS and was really trying to. And I appreciated his take. And one of the things that he made the distinction about is something better? Is it best? And is something just nicer? And that nicer adjective, I think, is the best descriptor for the iPad Pro versus other iPads. And so I'll come back to that. But to your question, why do I have a MacBook Pro? Honestly, I don't use it often enough probably to warrant having it. Like, I'll admit that. But when I travel, if I'm going to edit a video, I'm going to edit the video on that MacBook Pro. And there's a few times a year, either when I'm traveling with family or maybe on a work trip, where the MacBook Pro is the device I need in that moment. Do I need it all the time? No. But I need it those times. Just like the iPad. I can edit a podcast in Logic on my Mac, just like I can answer emails on my iPhone. I do it faster, and I enjoy it more, and I find it to be a better experience on the iPad. And so I think having devices that are purpose-based, it's a luxury for sure. And like to Gruber's point, like, it's just a nicer thing to have. But I want to do that. I want to edit podcasts on my iPad. When I'm traveling, I don't want to edit video on my iPad. I tried Final Cut on the iPad Pro, the 13-inch. Final Cut is good, and I edited a couple videos on it, but I don't prefer that. And there's also some being able to use animated plugins, which supposedly is coming, but Apple has not brought it yet, like Motion VFX, lower thirds, or whatever. I have it all on my MacBook Pro. It's great. And when I'm doing work like editing my website, it honestly doesn't work on iPad. Like, Squarespace just doesn't function well in Safari on iPad. And so if I'm on the go, that's my MacBook Pro. If I'm sitting here at my desk, it's my Mac Studio. And the Mac Studio is my workstation. It's where I edit my videos, but it's also where I record content, where I live stream, I do webinars for work. And so I think each device has a purpose. And when you have the ability to get the perfect device for the use case that you need. And for me, the iPad Pro is the perfect device for editing podcasts. The MacBook Pro is the perfect device for editing video on the go. That's why I have them. So
that makes sense. And I think you're right. I think that there is sort of this, like Gruber's point, that it doesn't have to be the best. I think people underestimate, though, the thing about Apple pushing the Apple Silicon in these devices isn't only about power, it's about the efficiency, right? And every time they increment that number, what that gives them is the ability to spend on other things, right? So they're getting the same battery life out of your device as I get on mine, and yours has 2 OLEDs in it. right?
Right.
And that's because the M4, not only is it more powerful, and like the Geekbench benchmarks, like it's ridiculous. It's
ridiculous,
just stupid. But it's also more efficient at the same.
Right.
And actually Apple made a point of saying like it can do the same work as the M2 with half the power. So if you're just editing a podcast, you should be like, it'll blow away, especially compared to like your Mac or your iPad mini.
Oh yeah.
But the point is that it isn't just about the brute power of it. Like we tend to over-index on that, I think, because I think Apple looks at it as we're building in so much margin that now you can do the same things and you will get better battery life, which means we can make the thing thinner, we can upgrade the displays, we can do all these other things. You know, they're looking at it from the entire package, not just, oh, look, line goes up on the numbers graph for how fast this thing is.
Right. And I think that efficiency, again, when I am editing podcasts, I have equalizer, compressor, noise gate. Sometimes, like when you were recording remotely right after the event, you were in that workspace, I actually applied voice isolation to your track to reduce some of the echo. And I did that all in Ferrite on iPad. And when I did that on my iPad mini, it's processing those effects live as I'm editing. And that is a processor-intensive task, especially when you're doing it for 1 or 2 hours straight.
Yeah.
And I noticed the battery taking a hit. And there were times when, like, my 2018 iPad Pro 11-inch was toward the end of its life, not the end of its life, but the end of me using it, that editing the Apple Insider podcast, I had to make sure my battery was near full, because when I was done with that process, it was like less than 25%, depending on how much editing and other things I was doing. And so that efficiency, is the M4 overkill? Like, well, one, why not? You know, if Apple has the chips and it's going to put a powerful chip in it, why not? But two, like having that efficiency, knowing I can edit an entire podcast episode and not think about battery, and I can preview these effects live, and then when I'm ready to export it, it happens in seconds, which I did last night. I exported a podcast episode that I had voice isolation on the tracks so much faster on the M4 iPad Pro than I was comparing it to the iPad mini. But it would be faster than like an M1 or M2. Is it a ton faster? Maybe not. Is it slightly faster? And if I'm trying to, like, I'm very time sensitive in a lot of my tasks. Like, as soon as we're done recording, I edit this, the video, the audio, I do the thumbnail, do the episode artwork. And so honestly, seconds are useful. And you times seconds by, like, I edit podcasts literally every day, and those seconds add up. And so even if it is just a few seconds of time saving, again, for my use case, I know this is not for everyone, I think it is a worthwhile thing to have a powerful chip in there. So I don't know. I really like this iPad.
Yeah, so I did want to ask one more thing. And you mentioned to me, I don't think you have said it while we're recording, that the display itself wasn't for you the most impressive thing. And I mean, compared to an iPad mini, though, I promise you that OLED display is pretty impressive. And you have a MacBook Pro that has a mini LED display. Right. And my take, and again, I haven't had nearly as much time with it as you because I only saw it at the hands-on, meaning the Pro. The one that I had to review was actually the Air, which does not have the OLED beautifulness. But tell me about that, because it sounds like maybe the Tandem OLED wasn't for you the thing that stuck out the most. But it is still really nice, right?
It's a beautiful display. Don't get me wrong. And you know, maybe if you were doing art and you were really dealing with like colors and textures and Procreate, it might even make more of a difference. I will say, I mean, the display is amazing, obviously. The mini LED on the 12.9-inch M2 iPad Pro was amazing as well. The one thing I did notice is I loaded up Interstellar because I was like, well, I want to watch something with a lot of dark blacks in the video. Interstellar is in space. And I wanted to see. And so I loaded it up. And when I started playing it on it, it was so bright. Like the space was really black, but the spaceship was really bright. And I was watching the scene when, you know, Matthew McConaughey is trying to dock with the Endeavor and it's like spinning. It's a great scene. The music, Hans Zimmer, come on. But anyway, I was messing with the brightness and I was at like 25%. And I was like, man, this is bright. And I was like, let me push this thing to the limit. And I kept raising the brightness and I got to like 75%. And I'm like, I think I might be losing my vision. I need to go back down. So I never made it to 100%. So is that useful in a dark room? No, but I'm going to edit this episode that we're doing right now outside. I'm going to go on my patio, and I want to see how that brightness works outside, because I think that could be a useful part of this Tandem OLED. And also, I didn't realize this about OLED technology. I was listening to John Syracuse talk about it, and how OLED displays, like every time the pixel illuminates, it degrades in its lifespan a tiny little bit, like an imperceptible amount, which I've never thought about before. Our iPhones have been OLED since iPhone 10, so it shouldn't bother me. But now I'm like, I don't want my iPad just sitting on. Like the screen was just on my desk, and I was like, you know what? I don't want those pixels working right now. I'm just going to shut it off.
I mean, Steven, hold on. Every computing device on the planet, every time it's doing anything, it's degrading a little bit of its life.
I know.
Okay.
But he was talking about how somehow like LCD displays, something about the backlight or whatever, like it would like it might have a little bit more longevity. And we're talking about like what, maybe 15 years instead of 10, which, I think we could all attest to. Like, there's probably some old computer monitor you found in a closet at your workplace, and somehow it still works. But
you will not be using that device in 10 years. Whether the OLED, it doesn't matter if that OLED display can still overpower the sun. You will not be using it in 10 years.
I know, but it gave me more confidence to say, okay, I don't even want to go to 100% brightness right now because it's just going to hurt my eyes. I'm like, okay, I don't have to worry about this OLED getting slightly dimmer over time. And if you ever want to know how imperceptible it might be, find somebody with an iPhone 10 or a 10s, crank the brightness up, and if it still looks bright to you, then you don't have to worry about OLED because those are OLED screen and it's fine.
Also, they're very good at managing that. Like they know that's true, and they're pretty good. Yeah. I will tell you, the movie you should have put on was Gravity, because that's a great HDR movie. When we put our OLED TV in our living room, the first thing we put on was The Bad Batch, because that had just come out, and that was pretty great in HDR too. So it is pretty impressive to just like, I didn't know that there was blackness like that existed in television, because all of us who come from like LEDs or LCD TVs, it's pretty different. So
everything's just gray. It's just all grays. All right, a couple of things, because we do have a lot of other things to talk about. I want to mention 2 reviews. One is Tyler Stallman. He had the iPad Pro Nano-Texture in his review, and I've been looking really closely because, and this is what I wanted to ask you about, because you've seen it. I have not seen the Nano-Texture yet in person. I'm going to go to an Apple store and check it out maybe sometime in the next few days. But he did the comparison of the Nano-Texture versus glossy, and the light dispersion is really cool. This is, if you're watching youtube.com/@primarytechshow, the Nano-Texture is on the left, the glossy is on the right in his video here, and he shines his iPhone flashlight like directly on the display, and you can see the standard glass. The light is very harsh. It's like a pinpoint, and then he does it on the Nano-Texture glass, and you can see it's like much more diffused, and you don't get that harsh light. So obviously it reduces the glare, but I didn't go with the Nano-Texture because like the black, you're going to lose some of the dark richness of the blacks and a little bit of the color saturation. I don't know how much. I've seen a couple people on social media talking about, yes, you do notice it side by side. Maybe it's not a big deal if all you have is the Nano-Texture. But do you remember, like from your in-person experience, like was it noticeable, the Nano-Texture color and black representation?
I don't know. So, okay, yeah, under harsh light, yes, but that's because it's doing its job. I think the one thing that Apple has made clear is that the Nano-Texture is not like a fancier feature that people should buy because they want the very best of the best. It is a feature with a very specific use case, right? It is a feature for people who are using it for like color correction in variable lighting situations. They also added like the True Tone or whatever, the sensor, like the ambient
flash.
Well, yeah, and then there's like also an ambient light sensor on the back there as well.
Right.
So like it is a very purposeful thing, and it goes along with the XDR and the studio display, displays. It's like I bet that half the people that put the Nano-Texture on their physical like studio display or whatever should not have done that. Like it's just not. It's for a very specific purpose, and if you work in a print shop with fluorescent lighting overhead and you need to like be able to have accurate representations, that's what it's for. It is not just like, I had lots of people after I posted mine send me, after I posted photos from the hands-on asking me, is it more like having a paper like, is it good for somebody who draws and they want it to feel like paper? That's not the purpose of this. That is not why Apple made this thing. And so I don't know. I think that the color representation is similar. It's just that where it looks most different is when it's doing its job, because it's diffusing the light. And obviously if you're diffusing light across a surface, it's going to look more washed out in that environment, but it is because it's doing what it's supposed to do. But underneath, those displays are the same, right? Like it is just as much contrast, just as much color. It's just that if you have it under certain conditions and it's doing its job effectively, it's reducing glare, but it also could give it the effect of like lower contrast, but that doesn't actually make the display lower contrast, if that makes sense.
No, I get it. Yeah, it's the appearance of it because of that top
Yep.
layer. Okay, well, I'm going to go to a store and check it out. The one other review I'm going to put in the show notes is iPhonedo. He did a lot of tests with the M2, comparing it to the new M4. One of them being the angle at which you can adjust it, and there actually is a greater angle of adjustment on the M4 iPad Pro and Magic Keyboard. So you do get a little more angle, and I do feel that just on my 11-inch when I'm trying to adjust the angle. So that's cool. And he also tested like the pressure that you might have to like use to knock it over. And he has this crazy tool, iPhone. He has all these tools like this thing, which measures like force or whatever. And so he was measuring, and he showed that it would take less force to knock it over, the new one, because the center of balance is a little different with that function row of keys and how it tilts.
And the base is lighter. Like there's less to pull over.
Right.
So.
Right, it's lighter. So, he did that test, and he did a bunch of other tests as well. So kudos to iPhone, though. He was the only one that I thought did a lot of these side-by-side comparisons. But I will say, too, the Magic Keyboard trackpad and aluminum base is very nice, feels premium. And it's weird. I remember the first time I had a MacBook Pro that had the haptic touchpad rather than the physical depressing touchpad. And whenever the computer was off, it didn't do anything. Like you couldn't feel it depress because it was all electronic. And so I had that same feeling with this one. If your iPad is not connected to the Magic Keyboard, this trackpad does not depress because it is strictly a haptic response. If the iPad is connected, even with the screen off, like I just had it, it will still click, quote unquote, because it's connected. But you take the iPad off, and that trackpad is just a solid surface. And that was kind of it was
depressing. I was just looking through all of my photos from the hands-on, and every single one of them with the new Magic Keyboard, and every single one of the, I have like 8 photos of these things lined up. Every single one of them, they have the iPad angled just so that the function row is not hidden at all.
Right.
Every single one.
Exactly.
And that means that every single time someone put one of those down, someone was like, they were under very strict rules. I can't believe, though, you haven't talked yet about the most important review, which is the magnet paper in MKBHD's video. He just did a short video showing the alignment of the magnets, and there's literally no reason doesn't matter except for it's cool. It's just very cool.
It looks
magnet
cool.
paper is so cool.
I did it in my live unbooxing too, and everybody was like, "You just copied MKBHD." Yeah, I have magnet paper, right here. And you can just get it on Amazon. I got it right here, and you can do cool things like here's the back of the iPad, here's the magnet paper, and you can see there are the speakers, there's the magnets, and the Apple Pencil. I did the magnet paper. I'll put my unboxing video in the show notes, but you could see how the Apple Pencil magnets are slightly different. The new one is wider, like the magnets are spaced wider because the camera is in the landscape side. Oh, which, Jason, the camera is not centered.
I told you this.
I know you told me that. I know everybody knows this, but I was like, you don't see it. Like when you're just using the iPad, you don't even see the camera, so it's not a big deal. But it's not. There is something in the center.
Yeah, it's close. It's close. It is.
Close.
There is a housing of the Face ID sensor, the camera, and probably like the flood illuminator that are essentially centered. It's just that the actual front-facing camera is the leftmost of those things, and so it is not in the center.
Exactly. Someone also showed that the new iPad Pro is thinner than a MacBook Pro lid. I think the 12.9 specifically is either the same width or thinner, to which they said there's no reason why Apple can't have Face ID in MacBook Pro. The thickness, that is the other thing coming from the iPad mini after 7 or 8 months. Face ID on an iPad is the best because it feels like you're using a computer when it's in the Magic Keyboard, but anytime you have to authenticate for like iCloud passwords or Apple Pay, it just does it because you're already looking at it, and it's
that is the thing I noticed the most reviewing this 13-inch iPad Air. The number of times I just sat there staring at it, and I'm like, why won't you do something? And it's like, I will. You just have to touch me first. And I'm like, why won't you do something? I'm swiping up, and it's just like, nope. And I'm like, oh, I have to. And so that was the moment when I had to register both fingers because you hold it differently.
Right.
But, Steven, I need you to do something. I need you to look at your iPhone.
Okay.
And I need you to look at the camera placement on your iPhone. Oh, yeah, it's behind you. You can't look at it.
Oh, I'm using my iPhone. You can't do that.
But here's the thing.
You know what? I think it's we've captured.
But here's the thing.
Let me get my iPhone.
Your iPhone camera is not centered either.
I know. Let's see. I just recorded for a behind-the-scenes video. Stay tuned for that.
And by behind the scenes, he means he recorded his behind.
So this phone is so hot right now because I was recording ProRes to an external SSD. So hot. My hand, my hands are burning right now.
But your camera should still be in the same place, no matter how hot it gets.
Listen, the dynamic island. That's the iPad just needs a dynamic.
It has one. You just can't see it. It just blends into the bezel.
It's just a very static island. It just sits there.
It's not
right
dynamic at all. It's boring. It's
not dynamic at all.
Okay.
Listen, I'm going to do a full video on the iPad Pro. We'll spend a week with it. But are you going to upgrade to the new one? I mean, you got your M2 iPad Pro. You're just going to hang out?
I don't know if I will upgrade to it. I mean, the OLED screen would be really nice. But again, if I'm using a MacBook Pro with the mini LED, I know the OLED's nicer. But like, if I just needed a portable, really nice display, the MacBook Pro has that. The M2 is just so good at this point, the M2 iPad Pro that I have. And I don't know that, like, I don't want to replace the Magic Keyboard. Actually, here's the thing. The main reason I don't think I'm going to upgrade anytime soon is that they no longer make the best iPhone case of all time. I mean, seriously.
The Smart Keyboard Folio. I did a whole video about why I ditched the Magic Keyboard with my 12.9 inch for the Smart Keyboard Folio because it was a great. And Chris Welch at The Verge, he did like an entire article bemoaning the fact that Apple's not making it anymore, which I think is a mistake. Logitech, somebody make a Smart Keyboard Folio for the new iPad.
I agree.
I would get one. All right, we got other stuff to talk about. ChatGPT-4o. Google I/O, which that section of this podcast is probably going to be 3 minutes, let's be honest. And then Jason's going to yell at me about the direction I put my Apple Pencil on my iPad because apparently I'm doing it wrong. I'm holding it wrong.
Well, and I didn't have an opinion about this until it came up. And then I realized there is an obvious answer to this, and it's not the one that Steven has chosen for his life. So
we'll get to that at the end. But before we do, I want to thank those who support the show directly. And if you have not yet, we would appreciate your support. You can do it either in Apple Podcasts, and you get an ad-free version, meaning you won't get this segment or ads that will be coming in the future. But more importantly, you get the bonus episodes. You can listen to the entire back catalog of bonus episodes, which is Jason burying an Ethernet cable. Very exciting. We talk about the death of physical media. We have Jason talked about Tesla for a while, and we have a bunch of great bonus episodes. So you can access all of that by supporting the show. You can do it directly in Apple Podcasts or go to primarytech.fm and click bonus episodes, and you can support the show there. And if not, you can give us a 5-star rating in Apple Podcasts and or Spotify. There's ratings over there too, and Spotify is actually crossed as the #1 podcast listening app. Did you see that, Jason?
I think I saw it because you probably posted it.
I did. I probably posted it, which is pretty wild. That is not the case for our show. Our show is like 70% Apple Podcasts, just so you know, and then it's like Overcast is next, and then Pocket Casts, and then like every other podcast app, and then Spotify's like.
I'm proud of our audience. I'm glad to see Overcast and Pocket Casts up there.
It is. No, it is great. And listen, but wherever you listen to the podcast, we appreciate it. And so keep listening, give the show a 5-star rating and review. And if you can support the show, we appreciate that as well. And now let's get back to it. OpenAI, I preempted. This was the first event of the week, actually, which was weird. OpenAI had their keynote like Monday at 1 p.m. And then Apple's iPad review embargo, and it was at 5 p.m.
Yeah, it was a weird time. It was a very weird time.
A weird time. And, MKBHD did not have a review video when it went up, but then he also announced he's, like, made the USA Frisbee team, which is wild, which is amazing.
It's not the first time he's actually missed one of these missed an embargo. It's not like we don't get, like, companies don't get to tell us you have to publish it this time. They just ask you, please don't publish before this time. And everyone, generally, it's an accepted principle that you respect that type of a thing. But he can publish it in his MKBHD. He can publish whatever he wants, and 3 million people at least will still watch it. It doesn't matter.
He could publish this review 3 years from now when we have an M7 iPad Pro. Doesn't matter.
It's like a retrospective on the M4. We hardly knew ye.
Yeah, 5 million views, 2 days.
It's great.
No
and
problem.
Good. And that's to his credit, right? Like, yeah,
absolutely.
So.
And if you ever. Those of us who are trying to do YouTube and stuff, remember, he's been doing this for like 14, 15 years, and he's been like, this is all he's been doing, and he's amazing at it. I appreciate his viewpoints. But OpenAI announced the next model of ChatGPT, which is ChatGPT-4o. O stands for Omni. And they had some pretty wild demos during their keynote. I'll link to this page in the show notes, which you can replay it. It's a pretty quick video. I mean, it's like 26 minutes, the whole announcement. And, for a newer company, I thought they did a really good job at a quote-unquote live event, which they actually had a live audience for this event. It was probably all OpenAI people, but they had a live event. They streamed it live, and they did some demos. A couple of the major differences with GPT-4o for Omni is the multimodal. Jason, I feel like I heard the words multimodal 1,000 times.
Yeah, what does that
this
mean?
Week. Multimodal means if you're in a conversation with ChatGPT or Google Gemini, you can be talking to it via your voice and then turn on the camera and show it something. And like you've now switched modes from a voice conversation to an camera image-driven exchange, and the large language model will follow you across those mediums. And so you can talk to it, and then like in the demos here, it shows a math problem where he showed the ChatGPT-4o. It's just running on his iPhone. It's just the GPT app, which you can get right now. Shows it a math equation, and GPT like walked through it. Didn't just give him the answer. He actually asked GPT-4o to be like, don't tell me the answer, just give me hints if I need them as I solve this. And so the mode being the camera of your device is interacting with ChatGPT and is talking to you. Honestly, the demos were very impressive. One of the more impressive things was just the voice and the like what it sounded like and how it actually interacted with the demo people, because it sounded way more natural than a lot of these robot voices. It sounded even better than like GPT-4 on your iPhone now. It was a little too snarky at times, which I think Gruber mentioned. Like it was a little saccharine. I don't know what that word means off top. Do you know what saccharine means?
I mean, in that
spot.
context, here's the thing, Stephen. Sometimes you throw out words that almost mean the thing that you mean for them to mean, but they
wait
don't
a minute. Wait a minute.
mean it. So I'm trying to
I'm
to interpret what you think it means.
Hold on a second. I'm going to put saccharine here in my look up the word.
It means
saccharine.
like sentimental or like
excessively
yeah.
sweet. Yeah, actually, sentimental is actually for the definition. That's pretty good, Jason. Excessively sweet or
words are my thing, buddy.
Wait a minute. Now I want to go back to saying I say words that almost mean what I want to mean. What do you mean?
I mean, occasionally I listen to other podcasts that Stephen does, and he'll spend a whole segment talking about what was the...
You're talking about the aphorisms.
Euphemisms.
Okay. Yeah, I said... So, Jason is talking about the Movies on the Side podcast, and you're talking about one episode. Now, you're implying that this is something I do regularly, which I don't think is the case.
There was a couple other times, but it's fine. It's all good.
I said euphemism when I meant aphorism.
No, when you meant idiom. It's fine. Anyway, I'm sorry. You can cut all this out. Anyway. Poor Stephen.
No.
Okay, let's go back to OpenAI, because there was something that was really interesting about this. I'm going to just bring us back on track since I'm the one that derailed us, and I apologize.
Please. No. It was a great demo. I was impressed. I paid for ChatGPT Plus because I use the API in a lot of shortcuts. Even for this podcast, when I ready the show notes, I'll throw it like several article titles to come up with like a podcast episode title ideas, and then I'll massage it after that. But GPT-4o you can use in the app, and I just have to say the iPhone and iPad app is really good now. It used to fail, like that action used to fail a lot of the times, and so I went with Federico Vitici's SGPT shortcut. But now the app is actually really good, and the shortcuts action you get with the ChatGPT app is really good. So that's been working really well. I find the large language model to be even better at summarizing and coming up with ideas. And they announced a Mac app, which this is the most frustrating thing, Jason. You can find the link to download the Mac app, but your OpenAI account has to be like enabled to use it. So I literally have the Mac app installed on my computer. I can open it up. I can click login, and then it says, "Oh, we're sorry. Your account's not ready for the Mac app." And I'm like, just give me the Mac app, ChatGPT, because I would run a bunch of shortcuts on my Mac. But anyway, what do you find the most interesting from this?
Well, the thing I think that was like the most interesting is that they did this whole event and Sam Altman was not up there at all. Like it was really interesting that they had this, that the CEO was not the one presenting. They had several other people. There's a couple of things I thought that were worth. Well, first of all, if you ever want to know, this is a true thing, Stephen. And this is a pro tip for our listeners. If you ever want to know when OpenAI plans on making a major announcement, all you have to do is look at the calendar and find out when Google is about to make an announcement. No, I'm not. This is true. The last several times that Google has had an event, OpenAI just preempts them like the day before. So, which tells you a lot. I think it was maybe Ben Thompson on Dithering who made the point, like, that just tells you who OpenAI is the most afraid of, right? They are that's who they're the most worried. And the reason is pretty obvious. Google's been working on this a very long time. They have not done a great job talking about how they've been working on it. We'll get to that. But Google is the company that has the ability to do this at scale in a way that nobody else can, right? Like, they run the world's largest, they have more servers literally than any other company. Like, they just have the ability to do this in a way that no one else does. So it makes sense that OpenAI is worried about them. The other things I feel like that is worth mentioning, this is just GPT-4 still. It's the same language model. This is not GPT-5, which is an entirely different model that they have to train. But what they did is they made it faster, like a lot faster. That is from an experience perspective really important, because if you're used to having to type something into OpenAI or to ChatGPT, to like the app or to the website, then you wait for it to do a thing and then you find out that it wasn't right. So it's like, oh, I gotta figure out a different question. The number of times that my second question to OpenAI is, "Are you sure that's right?" And it'll be like, "Oh no, actually you're right. I was wrong about that. And I'm like, I mean,
that's a good pro tip. I never thought about that.
If I'm asking you a question and I know that the thing you told me is not correct, then what are you even doing for me? Are you sure? Seriously, are you sure that's correct? And it'll go back and it'll do some more work. But now you can just interrupt it. You can be talking to it. You can just, if it's telling you a thing, you can just hang on. Actually, what I meant for you to do is this or whatever. And it's almost, it's not real time, but it is like way faster. So that just means that it's going to, the adoption rate for it it moves from being a novelty that people might use every once in a while for entertainment purposes to an actually useful thing, because it's so much faster. And it's multimodal, so it'll accept more than just text. It'll accept voice, it'll accept photos, it'll accept all these different types of things, and you can use those things and it will work on them. And then also they're making a lot of stuff free. Like, for free users, you don't if you're paid, you get, better access and more access to it, but
you get more requests. Yeah.
But they're all in.
Well, and the other impressive thing was with the Mac app, you'll be able to screen share with ChatGPT. And so they have several examples where they're talking about a graph. Another one, they're talking about code and how it's being represented like a weather forecast. And it was just asking ChatGPT, how do I adjust this code to do what I want? Which seems like an amazing tool. Also, a huge opportunity for someone like Apple, who makes a coding application, namely Xcode, to build this kind of large language model assistance into its app.
Yeah.
So you could just do it. Or you're trying to build a shortcut, and then it could just kind of walk you along, like formatting a date, and it can just help you, and you could just say, just format my date like this, and it puts in the right Unicode or whatever to do that. But it's impressive. I thought it was funny. Humane actually said that they were immediately integrating ChatGPT-4o into the Humane AI pin. so requests are automatically on this newer model, or not newer model, but this updated model. And so, I'm going to try my AI pin again. I'm not wearing it right now.
I noticed. I was actually going to send you a text message before we started recording and ask you where you were going to wear your iPad Pro. When you had the Vision Pro, you had to wear it. When you had the Humane AI pin, you had to wear it. How you gonna wear that thing?
Put it right here. Put it here in my collar.
You know that's not actually the more impressive side of that thing, but okay.
Well, I didn't. Yeah, fair enough. But anyway, it's interesting. I want to return back to OpenAI when we talk about Google, because The Verge had a great article, and lots of people are talking about it. Like, who is going to win? Will OpenAI make ChatGPT good enough to replace search, or will Google make search close enough to like an AI tool to obfuscate ChatGPT? And like, that's kind of the war going on, which is why I did the opening line. Begun, the search wars have. But before we talk about them together, let's talk about Google I/O.
Yeah.
Because that was also earlier this week. I don't typically watch it live, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to watch Google I/O live. And Jason, this was a 2-hour keynote that made me so thankful for the Apple fast-paced keynotes that we get at WWDC. I really struggled. And there was a lot of people on social media that said the same thing. Like, this keynote in general, there were a couple interesting things they announced, which we'll talk about. But overall, just the pace, the names, they have so many names of products, which half of them will probably not exist in a few years. Killed
The
by
names
Google.com.
or the products, just to be clear.
Yeah, the names or the products. So as I was watching, they started out with something impressive. Like Sundar Pichai was talking about some of the AI tools they're going to bring to Google Photos. And a couple things you'll be able to do is like, show me the progress of my kids swimming, how they learn swimming. And Google Photos will actually use face recognition to pull photos of your kid and photos of them swimming and like put together a little slideshow showing you the progress of that. Or you can ask questions like this. Again, if you're watching the video, you can ask it for, what's my license plate number again? And so if you've ever taken a picture of your license plate, it'll show. Now, Apple Photos might be able to do that too, like right now. Search is hit or miss sometimes with photos. But those are cool features with the AI photos and Google Photos. Okay, fine. And I think the bigger thing is the AI overview that Google talked about, which is basically what is launching now. AI overview is going to basically come to search, and for your Google search results, you're going to have basically that AI content at the top and then search results underneath. And I think that's the more controversial thing. But then after that, all I heard was a bunch of word salads. Jason.
Okay.
I heard DeepMind and all this stuff.
Okay, so a couple of pieces of context that might be helpful. So I was at Google I/O last year. I did not go this year for reasons mostly related to the fact that we have 4 kids and stuff's going on, and it was not worth the trip to fly out there. But Google I/O is similar to WWDC. It's focused on developers. But what you have to remember is that Apple is, one, better at marketing. And so they package the story differently, right? They package the story for a wider audience in that keynote. Whereas Google's I/O keynote is really targeted at developers primarily. And so that's why it's just a list of things. It's like, let's talk about this, and then let's talk about this, and let's talk about this, and let's talk about this. And 2 hours later, you're like, I don't know what you talked about. It's just a lot.
And I think a big distinction there is Apple will mention Metal for the Mac and how that software piece, can help developers develop games better, graphics, whatever. And it's maybe a 10-second mention of Metal, the technology. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like Google will take a topic like that, some kind of deep developer tool, and make that a 20-minute segment of the keynote. And
it's kind of like Google is taking the WWDC keynote and the State of the Union keynote and combining them, right? And so it just is a lot more. And I think generally speaking, I haven't written about it yet. That just tells you how much there was. But my overall thing is Google's AI problem isn't the tech. It has the tech. It's better than anybody else, and it has the ability to scale beyond what anybody else does. Especially OpenAI, who obviously they have a partnership with Microsoft, which helps. But even still, Microsoft's cloud business is not tailored specifically towards a thing that Microsoft does, whereas Google's business is tailored. It's search. There are trillions of search queries all the time, and they can just type something into Google and tell me how fast the blue links come back. It's instant, right? Because they know that speed matters and stuff. My thing is their problem is the story. They're not very good about talking about it, and that's because at Google, all of those things that you saw are all handled by different people. They're all just distributed across 100 different teams. And it's super interesting. And a lot of the stuff that you mentioned, even the search and photos and stuff, 100% makes sense that Google would be able to do that, right? Search. Their thing is search. They should be really good at that. I don't even think of that as AI. That's just, they've been doing that. Google Photos has had good search built into it for a long time. Apple Photos has had pretty good search. Built into it for a long time. The whole thing that they added where you can you have a picture of a cat, you can swipe up, it'll tell you what kind of cat it is. That's not AI. The phone itself doesn't know anything about cats. It doesn't know that cats are a thing that exists in the world. It just knows that photo equal this, these bits equals this, and so we return this result. So that's great. I think Google just has a problem with how they talk about it. And what will be really interesting, you mentioned the AI overview, which essentially replaces their search generative experience. And let's be honest, AI overview is a much better name. I'll give Google credit than search generative experience. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. But those are if you're saying you could type into it, I'm going to Boston next week and I need 3 places to schedule reservations for dinner meetings that are close to the hotel I'm staying at. you could never type that into Google right now. Google will be like,
Right.
here's the top results for Boston. Yes, I know it's a city in Massachusetts. That's not what I needed, you know?
Here's information on the Revolutionary War.
Or here's the airport, or whatever. But this will like actually go through and it'll actually run multiple searches. It'll be like restaurants in Boston near this, like whatever it would be with suitable like reviews for quiet environment or whatever. So like that's great, except for what if you're the website that posts like, what is it, like Eater or that kind of thing, and you count on writing stories like that and getting the traffic from Google, and now you're not going to be getting that traffic because Google is going to be doing all that work. And you can argue that that serves the user, except think about this, play this out for a minute. What happens when people are like, well, forget it. Why would I make this content anymore? What will Google then do? Where will it be getting this information from?
And this is the AI overview. One of the examples they showed, like, so, you know, yoga places, studios in Boston. And so rather than sending you to a website that is listing the top places written by a human, this is basically just pulling the Google Places business results, I assume, and telling you, like, these are the best. And that's the top in the AI overview. And that's pretty much what you'll get unless you scroll, like, way down.
Yeah.
And then you can see them on the map. People, like, even in this little example, like, Google is not showing any blue links to websites after several scrolls, it seems like. And they had another one where, you know, it might be useful. Like, they had a planning recipes or, you know, meal planning. And they're basically like, you know, ask for recipes or whatever and ask it to plan. Oh, and they also, so one of the multimodal things they did too was, you know, using the phone, the camera on your phone and Google search, you could say, what's wrong with this record player? Why isn't this needle doing its thing? And they asked one of those questions about a camera, and Nilay Patel from The Verge was like, the answer was wrong. Like, the answer, like, it would not, like, in the camera thing, it was like, why is this arm on the camera not extending? And the thing that the Google search result told them to do was, like, open the back and do something. And Nilay was like, your film will be ruined. Yeah. Like, you'll lose all your pictures. So I think that is a big problem. Are you actually going to give, like, accurate troubleshooting tips to someone and they not ruin their film? But also, to your point, like, if you ask it for a 5-day meal plan, which is cool that you can ask it that. Like, it's cool rather than trying to, like, search for a recipe for this or recipe for that and then make it into a meal plan. Being able to ask Google, give me a 5-day meal plan with these specifications, and it just pulls those recipes for you. Okay, cool. But to your point, it's pulling that data from actual websites and just presenting it to you in a way that obfuscates the need to visit that website. So will there, like, there's going to be a lot less motivation. Like, SEO, which has been a business of the internet for decades, I feel like it's not going to matter much anymore.
Well, okay, 3 thoughts. One, because you just threw that one out there.
Sorry.
I feel like SEO as a thing could deserve to not matter as much. So I'm not going to, I got to be careful because you think that we're going to get feedback from Tesla? Well, I'm just saying the SEO, like I do not. Anyway, so that's one thing. The second thing is, I guess the one thing we have going for us is currently Google's incentive is still the blue links to some extent because that's what it monetizes, right? So Google can't go all in on just the AI overviews because it hasn't figured out how to monetize that yet. It still has to have. I mean, it's like search revenue is like $175 billion or whatever, and that's just sponsored links on the search results page. So that is, I mean, there are a lot of negative consequences of that, like the fact that there's 10 ads before you get to any organic links. Like, that's bad. Yeah. But at least and
then it's Reddit posts after that.
Yes, but at least we know that those aren't going to completely go away yet because that's what Google monetizes. I'm sending you a link to one of the videos from it's a Threads post where somebody linked to one of the videos, and I mean, the future is really cool. This person's like walking around an office with their phone, and it's like, you know, what is this thing, or like it's asking it questions, and it's with the camera looking at different things, and then it gets to the end, and it's like, tell me where you saw my glasses, right? Like, and it's like, and it goes back and it remembers cool. It was on the desk next to an apple, and it's like, so it's a very cool thing, to be honest with you. But it's, you know, and obviously this is a demo, so how well will this actually work? I don't know. But like the person like points at it and says, what part is this? And it tells it it's the tweeter or whatever. So like,
that's cool.
All of those types of things are very cool. Like, there are lots of very like Google is good at this. It knows what it's doing in terms of this. So
Yeah.
I think that in OpenAI at this point doesn't have anything that can compete with this sort of stuff. Of course, this is probably only going to be available on the Pixel, so none of us are going to get to use it anyway.
Well, for like 3 months, and then they'll bring it everywhere.
So then the last thing I was going to say, though, what's
Yeah.
striking, and this is like, I find this fascinating, is if you go to a Google's homepage and you type in a search, and you have the little options to filter by like news, by images. They've added one for web. So if you want to only have blue links, you can actually just click on web and it will only give you results from the web, which is like says so much about the current state of both search and of Google that they have actually added a filter if all you want are links from the web. And it's funny the way they talk about it. It's like in some searches, it'll be a default option for you to click on. And on some searches, you're going to have to click on the more to get to the web.
For what it's worth, I just Googled myself. I didn't know what to do real quick. And yeah, you can just get the blue links. It was under like the more tab. Like it wasn't one of the main things on it. But that's a cool mode.
Yeah.
I'll probably use that mode now.
I would set it to default if I could.
Well, that's the thing. And this is the last thing we'll talk about Google I/O and bringing OpenAI back into it, is this part in the keynote where Google said Google will do the Googling for you, which is a fascinating like admission to just say like our goal is that you don't have to Google. Like, well, like I understand the turn of phrase. I don't know what the right word is, Jason.
Well, listen, do you want to know what's most... Hold on. This is the most amazing thing about that slide that person is standing in front of, is for years, I've been in briefings and been corrected. Google would insist that the way you talk about the thing you do with Google is, quote, search with Google. Google was not a verb. Like, they did not want you to use the phrase like, I'm going to just Google it. Well, it didn't matter. Everybody did. And now on their stage, they have a slide that says Google will do the Googling. It doesn't say Google will do the search with Google for you. It's like, I don't know if this is just they've laid down and they're like, fine, you win, people, or like somebody in marketing wasn't paying close enough attention. I just think it's interesting that they've changed that now because it's like, this is the thing that everyone does anyway. And yeah, Google's basically saying, and it's kind of what you were talking about. Like, it's going to go and do the search for the yoga places in Boston, and it's going to search for your location that you were at, and it's going to then search for rankings and reviews, and it's going to put all that together, and it might be doing 5 searches in it, but it's only going to give you one set of results.
I think this is probably the best marketing thing they did this entire keynote, because the vernacular is Google is a verb. Like, I hear celebrities say it. It's said in TV shows or whatever, like, just Google it. People don't even say search.
Well,
it.
hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt. But
no, good. Yeah.
Okay. I'm so glad you brought this up, and this is such a tangent, but
I did not know that Google search was going to be the most passionate topic you ever got about on this show.
I mean this sincerely. I want everyone who listens to this episode to find somebody that they know who is under the age of 20 and say to them, if you are trying to find a piece of information on the internet, what do you call the thing that you would do? None of them will say Google it. Not a single one, I promise you. You know what they say? I'm going to search it up.
What?
Without fail.
Really?
I felt like, is there a TikTok video that I missed where this became a thing? Because this is what all of my children will come up and be like, could you search it up for me? And then I was having a conversation where we were like interviewing someone, and the person was like 19 years old, and the question was like, how did you find out about whatever? And they said, I just searched it up. And I'm like, hold on.
That's
when you say you searched it up, what did you? I just went to google.com and searched it up or whatever. I'm like, you didn't Google it? And they're like, I searched it up.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
so maybe that's why Google's calling it Google. They want to bring it back. They want the brand recognition. Yeah.
Because it was a brand for a while. It's interesting. My kids, they have a lot of screen time restrictions on their devices, and we don't allow like open Google search because, as anyone would know, like the internet
is a dark and scary place. Yes.
Right. So what I have done for my kids is given them a ChatGPT shortcut that they can interact with.
Because that's less dark and scary for sure.
At least it's just text. It's only text based, especially when you just run it through the shortcut. And they use it like a search engine because they don't have another search engine. Like, they'll ask Siri, but as their experience has shown, Siri is not going to be super useful in a lot of queries. So they'll just type in this shortcut and get an answer from ChatGPT. Whether or not it's hallucinating remains to be seen. But I find that interesting. That's just my kids' experience. I'd be curious, our listeners and viewers, if you have kids under 20, what is their vernacular when it comes to search? But that's an interesting.
And the biggest takeaway there is that Siri is not dark and scary. She's just dim-witted, right? Like she just doesn't know. She just can't help you.
Maybe that'll change in 3 weeks.
Man,
it really does need to, because the last thing, I'll just put this article, Google and OpenAI are racing to rewire the internet. This was an article from The Verge by Alex Heath. I think it's actually part of a newsletter, but this is the question right now. These two companies, Google, who has owned web search, and like I mentioned before, SEO has basically been an entire business just for Google. It's every website, I used to build websites for clients on Squarespace, and the number one question was, and just do whatever SEO you need to get me on the first page of results. Which was always like
stuff on there.
Which was always be like, as soon as I heard a client say that, I said, okay, never mind. I'm not making a website for you, because I knew there was no magic potion. For many years there were ways you can hack it. People would put lots of text in the headers of their website, or put text that was the same color of the background of their homepage to try and game SEO. And obviously Google has gotten much better at that. Now we still have kind of SEO games we talked about on several episodes ago. Websites like CNET that typically has nothing to do with mortgage rates or mattresses, but we'll do articles about that because it's good for quote unquote SEO, because that's what people are searching for. And so we are living in the space now. Again, The Verge talks about it a lot, where web search, and we've talked about it here, has become less useful. These AI tools have become more useful, and now these two companies, Google and OpenAI, are, I don't know, I think there is going to be one methodology that wins out. I don't know. I am nostalgic. Maybe it's because this has just been my experience. I liked the internet and how it worked for a long time. I liked being able to search, give me the top HomeKit doorbells, and find an article on imore.com or whatever that told me the top doorbells. Like, I appreciated that ability. I don't know, even if the source is still iMore, I don't know if I want Google's AI overview to show me the 4 doorbells at the top of the page with the name and links to buy it, and not show me the iMore article. I don't want that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe most people do want that because it saves them a click to a website and having to read it, but I think that would be a loss. I think that would be an overall loss for the internet. I don't know. Am I thinking about this too deeply?
No, I don't think you're thinking about it. I just wrote down, I liked the internet. It's like the first line of the obituary for the internet. I'm going to save that for something. Maybe the title of a future book or something. Anyway, I think that...
But do you feel similarly?
So I have a hard time believing that the long game for this could possibly be to completely replace the way that we know search as it exists. Now, again, search as we know it is not great because it's full of mostly garbage. Like at this point, most of the results... I had to look up a recipe on Sunday morning for something, and I just threw my phone across the room. Because first of all...
My grandmother came over...
Because it's... Exactly. It was like for monkey bread... And I'm like, the first thing should be the ingredients and the instructions, and then if you want to tell me a story. But not only is there 700 words of just garbage on this page before you get to anything, also those 700 words were separated by, no kidding, 35 ads, right? So you get like 3 sentences ad, 3 sentences ad, and you're just like, what are we even doing? And the problem is that's exactly what Google has rewarded for so long. It's like, this much content, that will help you to rank. And if you rank well and you get enough traffic, then you can monetize that traffic by showing ads, and you've made the experience so terrible. Like, I'm not kidding you. I wanted to throw my phone across and I just made up a recipe on my own, and you know what? It was really good. I should write an article about that. But I just feel like it's so obviously, but at the same time, at some point, if Google stops sending traffic to those websites, which in that particular case, maybe that would be good. Maybe we should not have it sending traffic to that. But if that were to happen, people would stop publishing recipes on the internet. Right. And then what would Google do? Right? Is it just like, oh, well, there's enough content on the internet today that if no one creates any more, we'll be good? Like, I just can't see that as being the case. The last thing I'll say about it is, I don't think most people are getting the search generative experience or the AI overview at this point. I think that was a thing you actually like had to sort of opt in. And so I don't even know how much of a impact, right? Again, because Google doesn't want it to make a huge, they just need to stay a little bit ahead of OpenAI. It's kind of like when tech companies go to Washington and they're like, please regulate us the way that we ask you to regulate us. Google's like, yes, we should definitely replace search with something that we come up with that's better, right? Like they just don't want to be, it's like if you're going to be disrupted, you should do it yourself. So
the last thing I'll say, I don't mean to be super philosophical, but I was talking to my wife the other day about our early internet experiences, which I don't know where you landed, but AOL was my initial experience, right? America Online, AOL Instant Messenger. And it was an amazing experience because you could connect to someone over the internet in real time, and it felt like a human connection just, over a long distance. Message boards in the early days. You could find people that were as passionate about a topic as you are and read their messages on a board. And the basis was still that human connection. And today, I still feel like, maybe I'm naive, but if I search for a recipe for monkey bread, if I were to actually find a recipe on a website that was written by a human being and the recipe was really good, maybe he was a little snarky, and so I would likely to read more of his stuff, that I would then develop a connection with that person who makes that website. And now when I want to find a recipe for pumpkin bread or whatever, that I would go back to that person's site first and see if they had one before searching. And I think that was the magic of the internet for such a long time, the ability to connect to someone else over great distances, whether it was a recipe or you had a passion for pens, I don't know. But that connection, like this change, I feel like erodes that. The SEO game has muddied it for years, like you were saying, because people have just put filler text and it's meaningless. But I don't want to lose that. I still feel like that's one of the great things about the internet. And so I'm not sure how that's going to go in the future.
Yeah. You're philosophical. I'm unfortunately not. It's depressing. This is the third depressing thing we've had the conversation. It's sad because it's just like, yeah, I agree with you that it's, and as somebody who makes their primary living from people reading things that they publish on the internet, it just all feels like sometimes roulette. What is it even? What are we doing?
Right. And Jay Klaus, who's an awesome creator, and he makes stuff for creators, he talks about it. He said, you don't have an audience. Like whether you have a YouTube channel, a podcast, a website, a blog, a newsletter, it's not that you have an audience of a bunch of faceless people. You actually have a bunch of one-to-one connections with people who are interested in your work. And you probably experience this as a writer. I'm sure you have people who email you maybe regularly about some of your topics. And I have people that do that too, like with the podcast, our community now. It's really a bunch of one-on-one relationships, not just one to a faceless audience. And I feel like this change in Google search and AI is trying to move the internet to that faceless audience feel. And I don't like that. I don't want that. And even if it helps me plan a 5-day recipe meal plan better, I don't think it's a worth trade-off. And maybe you could do both. Maybe there's some, utopian future where we can do both, where you get the 5-day meal plan and you find a great recipe creator and you get connected to them. But I don't know how that's going to work.
Well, you know what happened? Back in 2008, Apple introduced the App Store. And apps became a thing that people didn't pay for anymore, right? Their 99 cents is like I know that I've recommended apps to people before subscriptions were a big thing, and the app would be $5, and people are like, why would you pay $5 for an app on your iPhone? It's like because it took the person 3,000 hours to make it. Like it's worth the $5, right? And so the thing is that the amount of what we'd be willing to pay for a thing, even a thing that has value to us, has just decreased almost to zero. And that's because the internet made it basically free to distribute things. And so, you could distribute things for free. You could then capture a bunch of traffic. You could monetize that traffic with ads instead of charging for things. Well, once you start doing that, now your incentive is just to attract as much traffic as you can and cram as many ads. Like go to any local newspaper's website and it is just like, come on, what do we do? Like, this is impossible to read. And sometimes you'll go to a website and you're like, oh, I have an ad blocker for that. And they're like, well, then you can't read our site. It's like, I get it. Like, again, I 100%. The problem is the only real seems like viable business model at the moment, I don't know that it's sustainable, is collecting pennies in ad revenue from as many people as possible, as opposed to collecting $10 a month from some people who actually really value you, because finding those people becomes harder and harder without just trying to do the thing that scales, which is like make it all for free, make the garbage, hope that Google pops your thing up. It's just, so yeah, it's very unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about something happy before we talk about my Apple Pencil orientation, which is that Apple pre-announced a bunch of accessibility features that's going to be coming to iOS 18 later this year, and they're amazing. Yeah. The first thing being this eye tracking feature, which is you can control your iPad with your eyes. You'll be able to just look and, so I assume, blink and select things on screen. Amazing for accessibility. Yep. So eye tracking on the iPad. They also announced a bunch of other features like music haptics, which is really cool. Vocal shortcuts, where you don't even have to say the magic words. You can just have your phone do things. You train it for a specific phrase, and it'll just do it, which is awesome. Vehicle motion cues to help reduce motion sickness. I am very curious if this actually helps people on their devices. Like these little dots are kind of floating around the screen to match the acceleration or direction of the vehicle, which seems amazing and wild, and I would love to know if that really does help. I've seen those crazy goggles with the water in it. Have you ever seen those?
No.
The glasses with the water in it?
Did you wear your Vision Pro in your pool? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, it's these big goggles that has like water filled up to the halfway mark around these tubes around the goggles. And if you wear it in the car, I guess the water, how it moves with gravity, it supposedly helps reduce motion sickness. But this is a much more elegant solution.
Well, and the thing is, the reason people get motion sick in the car is you're staring at your phone. And your body feels movement, but your eyes aren't registering the movement. And so there's that disconnect causes the motion sickness. I think this is genius. I'm going to write about it because I think this is very cool. And I think... So Apple started doing this. Like last year they did this. They sort of announced a bunch of accessibility features right before WWDC. And it might be that they just don't have room to talk about all of this in the keynote. Sure. But this is really important stuff for a lot of people.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I think it was a World Accessibility Awareness Day. They've been announcing it. They've been announcing these features annually on that annual celebration. So this is so cool. That the eye tracking especially, you know, I think about, I don't know if you remember like old documentaries like with Christopher Reeve or Stephen Hawking, and they would have these incredible computer setups that allow them to control computers with their eyes, you know, with very limited physical interaction. And now just to have it built into an iPad, wild, like just amazing.
I mean, it's not that surprising when you consider they built the Vision Pro, right? And I know this is not exactly the same thing, but I'm super glad to see. I mean, you have to think that they learned some things from building the Vision Pro that made it possible for them to do this, because really it's just using the front-facing camera to watch your eyes. Like,
right. And they also did some things with Vision Pro, like these live captions when someone's talking to you, and if you were wearing Apple Vision Pro, which that's pretty cool. And like language-wise, you build translation into this, which I didn't know. I don't think translation is built into it right now, but I imagine that would be coming. That would be awesome.
I agree.
It'd be very cool. So anyway, we'll put a link to that newsroom article. All right. We have two topics here, Jason. What should we put in personal tech quickly, and what should we put in the bonus episode? My Apple Pencil direction, and you using the Apple Vision Pro every day.
I think that Vision Pro every day should go in the bonus content.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about. All right, that's good. So our bonus episode is going to be what Jason is doing in Apple Vision Pro every day, which is good because then I can talk about something that I couldn't talk about publicly.
Okay.
And I'll do that in the bonus episode.
Ooh, there's a good incentive.
Yeah. Here's my iPad Pro, Apple Pencil. This grip works with the squeeze gesture, by the way. So I can actually use the squeeze gesture with the Apple Pencil Pro. I have the tip facing towards the volume buttons because when you hold your iPad in portrait mode, which is how the logo is oriented, the tip is facing up. How it should be facing.
But why should it be facing up,
right.
Steven?
It just feels right. Okay. It feels right,
Okay,
Jason.
so hold that iPad in your hand, right, like you are.
Yeah.
Pretend like you're about to write something. Take the pencil off and start to write. Take the pencil off.
Okay. Hold on. Hold on.
What is... Yeah. What just happened there, Steven? Watch me.
Listen.
Look at this. Oh, it's in the perfect position. Like, it's perfect. Steven, this is the easiest thing in the world. This is the objectively correct way. And it's even true here. Watch. If it's in this direction and you pull it, it's perfect.
I know.
You tried to trick us here, but it's like, Steven.
I know.
This isn't even complicated. There's no debate. Why in the world would you think that it's more like your hand is built in a certain shape, right? You have a claw here. You have a pencil holder device, and you pick up the pencil and it's just perfect, and then you put it back and you pick it up and it's in the right position and you put it back, as opposed to this weird nonsense where it's like, hang on, let me turn my pencil around before I can use it. Why? And then I have to turn it around again to put it back. Why would you do that, Stephen?
Okay.
Defend yourself.
Well, I have
exactly.
Listen, I have no defense. I actually saw my wife's iPad Pro, and I saw how she put her Apple Pencil, and I was like, oh no, she does it that way too. Listen, I get it. Okay, everybody's been tweeting at me. Andrew Clare, also great YouTube channel. Appreciate you following the show. I wish I don't have a Jason is just mocking me now with his Apple
I'm trying
Pencil.
to help you. It's like a repetitive thing. If you just get used to doing it that way.
It is. So he sent me. There's a quick start guide in the iPad Air. Did you get this?
Yeah.
Did you get this little quick start guide? So he sent me this quick start right here. I found the tweet. Okay. Hey, this is Andrew Clare. He's on X, and he tweeted this at me. I don't know what to say. Tweet, post, whatever. Anyway, he sent me the image of the start guide. I'll put a link to this in the show notes, and it has Apple's own quick start guide.
Yeah.
Showing the Apple Pencil oriented tip down. Every product marketing image of the iPad is the tip down. I know that's how it's supposed to go. Okay.
Well, the funniest part about this, Stephen, is until this came up, I have never once thought about this in my entire life. And when people ask, like, which direction do you put your pencil? I'm like, I honestly don't know. I have to look. And then I'm like, wait, there is an obvious way to do this.
I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why.
I'm so happy.
I don't know why. Because this also like blocks the volume buttons when you put the Apple Pencil this way. Like, so you can't get that volume button, where if you do it this way, then the volume button is like clearly accessible. I don't know why. I've always done it this way since 2018 when the first iPad came out. So I have like 6 years of experience doing this. I think it's just a visual thing where to me it's like a spaceship. It's like the Saturn V rocket. You know what I mean? If I'm holding my iPad in portrait mode and it's vertical, like the rocket ship is taking off. You know what I mean?
See,
like
on
it
this
just
one, it
feels
just looks like the side thruster is about to blast down.
That spaceship is Tesla stock right now. It's just plunging right to the ground. It's just going straight down. Sorry if I offended all the Tesla listeners. Listen, I understand. This visually, I don't know why. It just doesn't look right to me. It looks weird.
Stephen, if you will just leave your pencil the correct way for a week, I'll give you $1,000. Right. And I think, I'm just kidding. I take it back. I didn't say that. But I feel like if you did that for a week, you'd be over it.
All right, I'm going to do it. I'll do it. I commit to putting my Apple Pencil backwards on the iPad. and we will see. I mean, I get it. So now, wait a minute. So if I'm holding it in landscape, I have it supposedly in the correct orientation right now.
And you still grab it. Look, boom. There you go.
Grab it. Okay, I get it. I'll commit to a week, and we will revisit this in our personal tech next week.
So happy.
It just looks backwards.
But I'm saying if you do it for a week, it won't look backwards.
All right.
Okay.
I will try.
This has been my favorite personal tech segment we've ever done, because this is the thing I didn't care about until you made me think about it, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, there is an answer for this.
Basic Apple guy, I don't need you gloating on social media, okay? Because he's been posting product photos for forever. One actual question: when did Apple stop putting replacement tips in the box of the Apple Pencil? Because I thought the last time I bought one, which was actually semi-recently, it came with spare tips, and the Apple Pencil Pro does not. The one tip. That's all you get. No?
I don't remember, because most of the Apple Pencils laying around here were sent to me as review units, and all I ever do is take the pencil, and I don't even look in the rest of the box. Listen,
Yes.
my habit this is the thing we need to talk about, Stephen. I cannot believe we haven't talked about this yet. We may have to save it for another bonus episode. But the only two things I ever do whenever I open basically anything that's not like a computer is I take out the accessory and I take out the stickers.
Right.
And now there's no more stickers.
I never used a single sticker.
Stephen.
So I've never. There's one on my car because my son snuck it on there I never intentionally used a sticker. Never, not even one sticker.
Steven?
See, Jason can't even find the stickers.
Oh, no, Steven, I haven't. Listen, I've never once used them. Do you want to know what I've done with them? They are all.
What?
Right here.
I have no idea what Jason's about to pull out. You could give me all day. I would not guess what I'm about to see with my eyeballs.
I can't find it.
Well,
But I have an
there you
envelope. And in the envelope are every Apple sticker I've ever gotten. I have the Apple stickers from the very first Power book I ever bought.
Really?
Every single
That's
one
pretty cool.
in an envelope. I've saved them all for why? I don't know. Like what? Ooh, but this one is really nice. This is like a metallic sheen on them. And they started putting like the dark ones in there.
Yeah, the
This
space
one,
black.
yeah, I don't even know where these came from.
Is that a midnight? Is that a midnight Apple logo?
That is midnight.
It looks a little
right there.
bluish.
That's midnight.
Oh.
Came with the MacBook Air.
Now that's a cool collection. I'll give
That's
you
what I'm
that.
saying.
That's pretty cool. Okay.
And they've been doing it
Well,
since 1977. The Apple IIe came with colorful stickers.
Listen, I'm not here to put Apple on blast. I feel like, the whole environmental responsibility, cool. The two mistakes were fine woven and stickers. People are mad about the stickers.
The two
And also
mistakes
fine
are
woven is not great.
taking the stickers out, not making them in the
Taking
first
stickers
place.
out.
Okay. I just wanted to be
No,
clear.
no. Taking them
Yes.
out. Even iJustine, which iJustine rarely has anything negative to say. And I don't know if she said anything, but when she was unboxing her iPad Pro, she said, no sticker. And she looked at the camera and gave a look.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think that's the first break in character for iJustine I have ever seen.
Yeah.
It's the sticker.
I
The
will.
sticker bride.
I wrote about it. I'll post the article in our community, and if you're a member of our community, you can tell me what you think.
About the stickers?
Yeah, about them taking them out, and if you've collected
Oh, about the
stickers
stickers.
and all
Oh,
that
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stuff.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to see that. Okay, well, join the community, social.primarytech.fm. You can hear about that. You can yell at me about the Apple Pencil there as well. I'm going to try it for a week. I'm committing to the week. Maybe I'll vlog my experience to the community. Oh, there's the
Yep.
envelope. So many stickers. Oh, he just
I
dropped
just dropped them
Now they're
all,
on
so
the
it's gonna
floor.
be. Some of them are even on round paper.
That's kind of cool. That is kind of cool. That is. I'll give you that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So all right. Well, read Jason's article about stickers. Support the show in Apple Podcast or primarytech.fm. Click bonus episodes. Also give us a 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcasts. That's help us on the charts. We appreciate it. We're going to go talk about what Jason is doing. I don't know why I'm so upset about it. What Jason is doing with his Apple Vision Pro every day, because I'm very curious. But anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.